Special Operations, Covert Ops, Espionage, The Team House, with your hosts, Jack Murphy and David Park.
Hey everybody, welcome to Team House, episode 364. I'm Dave Park. Joining us tonight is Lee Deckleman. Lee is a former Ranger, former SF, a plank holder at Triple Canopy, has done a lot of great things, a lot of wild things, a general man about town, international man of mystery, as it were. Thanks for joining us tonight, Lee.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate you having me. I'm grateful anytime I can unpack my life story among my tribe. It
is a hell of a story, too. Lee wrote a book about his life. Going all the way back. Actually, your birthday is only one day after mine.
So you're Aquarius.
Oh, yeah. But the name of the book is Internal Volume. And as we get more into your story, you can tell us where Internal Volume comes from. Because it's not just a story about your life, but it's a story about, I don't want to say your dysfunction, but your trauma. And not just, trauma from war or trauma from combat, trauma from security or whatever, but just the traumas of childhood. Like your childhood was not a pleasant one. And sort of how that manifested throughout your life and things like that. You also founded Be Yoga Strong. And, right, Be Yoga Strong is the name of your
Right. Well, that 5 years ago, when I founded Be Yoga Strong, COVID hit right after that. And so I've struggled to kind of hold on to the foundation and grow that. And so where that's at right now is kind of on pause.
Okay.
But that was outside of just getting healthy and getting my own internal volume to a real low and good place. The only other purpose I had was wanting to provide free yoga to my community, as a form of free therapy.
Yeah.
7 days a week where people would have a soft place for free to land at the end of a hard day.
Yeah.
And so that's the goal. We'll probably get into it a little bit later when I can explain how that's kind of shifted.
Sure, absolutely. So let's start from the beginning. We like to ask everybody, what is your origin story? What made you the man you are today?
Well, I started out in life below average, so not even average. When I was born, I was 2.5 months premature, and I was cross-eyed, and I spent months in an incubator in the ICU before I went to foster home. At about age 6, my parents, my birth parents, came back and got me, and along with my other sisters who were also in foster care. And we moved from Baltimore, Maryland to Tennessee a couple of years after that. And just a couple of days after getting to Tennessee at age 9, my father died. So I was on another planet. We were Jewish in Middle Tennessee in the 1970s. I was 9 years old, had just come from foster home. I really hadn't even got assimilated with my new family properly, and my dad was gone. So that was that was the first trauma I remember. That was a real tough spot. My mother was homicidal and suicidal. And so it was a very dysfunctional situation after that. It got worse instead of better once we moved here. And football. My father was really good at football, and I didn't know my father, but I knew he was a World War II veteran, and he was really good at football. And so I wanted to be really good at football. The only problem is I was the smallest kid in my grade every year, and I talked funny because I was from up north, and you know, a little Jewish boy, and everybody was Christian. So I did feel like I was on another planet, and that led to really focusing on football, and that's really kind of what saved me. And when football was over and I didn't have the size or the grades to go to college, that was a real low spot in my life right after I graduated high school. And so I decided to join the Army. I never wanted to be in the military. I didn't like discipline. You know, I was kind of a wild-eyed Southern boy, a rebel, you know, in my nature. And so I didn't want to go in the military, but I did. And since I was going to go in, I decided, well, I'm not going to just go in. I want to do something special. Because when you grow up as a traumatized kid with nothing and you feel like you're nothing, you have to become something, right? So that's your ego. Like you have to attach yourself to something. I have to be something. And so being a ranger was important. That was my life mission.
So, you know, you talk a little bit about the trauma of childhood. You go into a lot of depth in the book, but I'd like to kind of rewind a little bit because when your parents came, you were living with your foster parents for 7 years, correct?
Well, for the first year, there was a lot of transition. So about 6 years, yeah.
Okay. And the first year you were 1 year old. So
Right.
Yeah, so you weren't really keeping a diary at the time. But you know, if you don't mind me talking a little bit about what's in the book, because I do want people to understand sort of like the depth of the trauma and where it started, and then, you know, because it gets, you know, it ends up with yoga, but your mother was on Valium and a number of other things or whatever when you were born, which is why you're premature. She went into a deep depression, and you were made wards of the state. You never really lived with your parents. Your foster parents were your parents, and you know, you said that your biological parents came and got you, but you in the book you talk about how they came and got you, and it wasn't just traumatizing for you; it was traumatizing for your foster parents.
That's right. My foster mother was crushed. Rose was crushed. That's all I really remember leaving was that she was crushed.
Because they just showed up, right? They just showed up and said, "Here we are. Come on, kids." And so this woman who had been raising you for 6 years as her children just watched you walk out the door.
That's right. And the unfortunate part is, you know, they tried to find me my whole life and get back in touch with me because my parents cut off any kind of, they never spoke of them, never mentioned their name. And so it was through social media that my older foster and brother from that family finally found me. And it wasn't that long ago. It was around 2013. I was working at Facebook at the time, and they contacted me. And, you know, it was kind of magical to be able to talk to them and fill some voids, fill some gaps, and get some, you know, and so I ultimately went and took my son and went and met them. And so that was nice, but Rose had already died, so I didn't get an opportunity to see her as an adult. And, you know, if anything makes me sad about that, it's that.
Mm-hmm. So, you know, you feel adrift, you get out of high school, you join the Army. What was that like for you? You know, joining the Army, you didn't want to be disciplined. You're kind of a wild one. And now, you know, you don't just join the Army, but you go to RIP, you know, you do all this stuff, and then you go to battalion. What was that like for you?
Well, as much as I didn't like discipline, I hated being a nobody. I hated just being empty, and so I had to fill that. So it's kind of like you do things you normally wouldn't do when you want something bad enough. Mm-hmm. And so I was willing to do and put up with whatever they put me through. I would have done practically anything. And so the hardest part for me about becoming a Ranger and getting into regiment was just getting there. The problems or how problematic that can be when you sign up for the Army thinking that you're going to Ranger Regiment and you find out that you're just going to an infantry unit, and you don't realize that until you're in basic training. And so that fight to finally get into regiment, fighting against the Army in the original contract, that was the hardest part.
Yeah. Yeah. So as your book kind of lays out fairly well, you're a bit of a scrapper, and you're not crazy about authority or people abusing their authority or speaking to you, in disrespectful ways. How did that mesh with, being young Cherry Lee,
Yeah, that's a good question. So when I was growing up in the 70s in the South, you could fist fight. Like that was just normal behavior. Like the teachers would just go out on the playground and they would gather and talk, and you'd sort out whatever you needed to. So being violent, being monstrous, behaving like a sociopath wasn't unacceptable. Mm-hmm. And so getting into the military, especially into Ranger Regiment, you're almost it's almost an advantage to be a sociopath or to be on that spectrum. Mm-hmm. To be able to compartmentalize in that sense. And the difference between a good Ranger and a bad Ranger, or a good SEAL or a bad SEAL, is, are you wearing a white hat? Or are you wearing a black hat? Because we're almost all on the spectrum of being sociopaths. So, and every now and then you meet a psychopath, right? Who's like, it's like, wow, that guy has ice going through his veins. Like, I don't want to ever cross him. But that was, it was a dream come true. And it was the 18 Delta course, graduating in 18 Delta course was definitely a highlight of my military career. But my time in Ranger Battalion and my squad in Ranger Battalion, Bravo Company, 3rd Platoon, 2nd Squad, out of my military career, that's my most beautiful memory. Yeah. I cherish that. And so it's kind of tough watching some of these GWAT special ops guys kind of make us look like idiots with lying and making up these stories. The best way to go about telling your war stories is leave a few things out, and that way you make sure you're not going to get in trouble or be called out for exaggerating too much.
Yeah. So you did your time in Ranger Battalion. Are there any highlights that you want to cover while you're there?
Well, I've got a pretty funny story. It had to do with my son being born while I was in Ranger Battalion. But
please,
other than that, no, it was peacetime. Yeah. So being in Ranger Battalion in peacetime was hard. It was just training. When I finally went to combat, it was like, okay, it's only hard when it's hard. It's not just hard on purpose. Right. People aren't trying to make combat hard. Your leadership isn't trying to make it harder on you. So combat was a break for me. I thought peacetime Ranger Battalion was the hardest thing I had ever done.
Yeah. So do you want to tell the story about your son?
Yeah. So when I was in battalion, I had my second child, and Josh, and he actually ended up going to Bravo Company, 1st Ranger Battalion, after he graduated high school, but he was born there. And the way that happened, well, it's not, it's kind of a long story.
Okay.
So we might want to, it's in the book, but it's kind of a long story. So,
all right. Buy the book. Oh, where can people find your book? Is it on Amazon?
It's on Amazon.
Okay.
Just if you put internal volume or put my name in, you'll see that beautiful art on the front cover. And that's the logo for the foundation, which again, it's on pause. I'm not doing anything with it currently, but I have been teaching over the last 5 years for free.
Hey guys, I want to thank a new sponsor that we have today. It's Brunt Workwear. They make great boots, great workwear. If you're a worker like me, if people who know me know I love to work with my hands like a man, my hands and my body. And when you work with your hands and your body, you need a good pair of boots. And honestly, I was so excited that we had Brunt as a sponsor because I bought a pair of boots a year and a half ago from them. Look at that. These are used, worn. Love these. These are called the Marins. I love them. Super comfortable, waterproof. So if you're out there, so you could sit and stand in standing water and mud or whatever, gets the job done. Brunt Workwear. Incredible product. So if you're a man who works, or a woman, right? Who cares, right, babe? If you're a man or a woman who works with their hands and their bodies and you need a great pair of boots, you go to bruntworkwear.com. You use the code TEAMHOUSE for $10 off. That's bruntworkwear.com with the code TEAMHOUSE, and you get $10 off. They're going to ask you who sent you. You know who sent you. It was the TEAMHOUSE. bruntworkwear.com. TEAMHOUSE is the code for $10 off. I love you. Thank you. And thank you to Brunt Workwear for supporting the show.
So you leave Ranger Battalion, and you leave the Army, right? You ETS and you join.
No. So the first time I was in the Army, I went to Ranger School as an infantryman.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't get into regiment. I had to get out and then go back in.
Okay.
To ultimately be in Ranger Battalion.
Okay.
After Desert Storm, after 20th Special Forces Group.
Okay, that's right. Because you went to Desert Storm with a conventional unit.
With a National Guard unit.
Yeah.
It was a disaster.
Yeah. That's right. So then you, because you got out a couple times, so you, right? So you go to Ranger Battalion?
I did. I went in 85 and ETS'd in 88. I got activated for Desert Storm in 90 to 91. And then when I got back from there, I joined the 20th Special Forces Guard unit. And then in 95, went back on active duty to 1st Ranger Battalion until I was medically retired.
Hey, Lee, I got a question because we never really have a ton of people that talk about Desert Storm. What was that trip like for you?
For my unit and for my experience, it should have just been, considered a training exercise. We really weren't, my unit didn't have a purpose there. And so when you're in a situation like that and you don't have really a functional purpose, you're not really participating in the war, they have to make up something for you to do. And so that's kind of what our unit, that's the space our unit landed in. And so I think what I got out of Desert Storm was what the news says about war can be 100% opposite of what's really going on at the time. I think that's the first time I ever realized that because of what CNN was putting out versus what I was seeing with my own eyes. And the other thing I think I got out of Desert Storm was, you just get that first combat deployment out under your belt. It's a little, unless you don't have a center in your brain that gets scared, the amygdala, unless you don't have one, like some of those cliff climbers, it's a little nerve-wracking trying to keep it together, and your first time going into a war where it's just an unknown. It's a complete unknown. And so getting that out of the way really helped.
So you come back from Desert Storm, you go to Ranger Battalion, because you didn't do the Q course while you were in 20th Group, right?
That's right. I just did selection.
Okay. So you go to 175.
That's right.
Okay, sorry about that. And then at the end of that time, do you get out again, or do you roll right into SF from there?
I leave. I was in battalion, first bat, and became a team leader, and I wanted to stay and become a squad leader because I kind of wanted to go to the unit, and my platoon sergeant at the time was a real dick, and I'm not going to call him out on here, but everything else about my platoon and everything else about battalion, I loved, except this guy. And so I just decided to put in a 4187 to transfer to the Q course since I had already been to selection and I had already been selected. It was just time to move on.
Okay. So you don't get out, you roll into the Q course.
That's right.
Okay. And how was that for you? How was SFAS?
It was the best. I spent almost 15 years total in the military. It was the best 2 years of my military career.
Yeah. San Antonio is that good?
No. I was the first class at Bragg.
Oh, really?
I was the first class where it was all at Bragg. You had to pass the National Register paramedic course. So SOCM became this beast of a medical course to get through. And so it was very challenging. But if something's done right, being challenged is a good thing. A certain type of stress is a good thing.
Right.
In the right environment. So great instructors, very professional operation. Everything that was done there was, respectable, honorable. There was a high standard, the opposite of anything that Tim Kennedy has been putting out there. The Ranger Regiment, the Green Beret community, those are really special places.
Yeah. So you finish the Q course, like top medic, right? And out of the 18 Delta course?
Yeah. Well, there was 18 teams. So out of my class, I think there were 14 teams, 14 or 18 teams, but it was SEALs, Green Berets. That was back when the PJs still went there. The independent corpsmen. So everybody went to the short course and long course there. And so out of my class, everybody was divided up. And it was a 26-mile land nav course. And every couple miles or kilometers, there would be a medical scenario, and it was a pass or fail. And the fail added 15 minutes to your time. A pass, you just continue to move. And it's kind of like the Tour de France. The first group to finish with the lowest time or the shortest amount of time wins. And so I was with the team that won. It was four Rangers. So it was two guys from 3rd Ranger Battalion, myself, and then a stud of a Ranger. I can't think of his name right now, but he was in Best Ranger competition. He placed in Best Ranger competition, but I can't think of his name right now. But yeah, so we won the Best Medic competition. I don't think they did it. I don't think they do it anymore. Logistically, I think it was real hard, and I think a lot of students didn't like it. Like the SEALs did not like it. No. I'm pretty sure the PJs didn't like it either. The PJs just had their own way of doing things. So I think that's why they ultimately came up with their own 18 Delta course.
And so out of the 18 Delta course, what group did you get assigned to?
Third group.
Okay.
I wanted 7th group because it was peacetime, and 7th group was the only guys going down range with magazines in their guns.
Yeah.
And so that's what I wanted to do. You know, I didn't mind J sets or anything like that, but I wanted to go shoot bad people.
Sure.
I wanted to be that guy.
Sure. And 7th group was getting it on, you know?
Yeah.
With their second families down in Panama.
They could do a Netflix series about 7th group during that time. That lasts about 10 years.
So you go to 3rd group, focused on Africa. How was that for you?
It was a disappointment. So, you know, I can be a purist sometimes, or I can be, you know, on my high horse sometimes, or, you know, I went through a lot to get there and I had a high expectation. And so when I went to Swaziland, Africa for the first time, I wanted to cure everybody. And, you know, if there was somebody in the village that was having complications with a delivery or whatever it was, and that was the scenario that happened that I'm was first upset about, you know, I want to be able to go and at least help. And, you know, not being able to do that, you know, having those kind of restrictions, you know, I just didn't understand it. It didn't make sense to me to have the type of restrictions. Just like in wartime, sometimes the ROE is geared towards favoring the enemy. And I don't care about the political or what the narrative is. You know, the guys on the ground know and what's right and what's wrong. And so anyways, I get sidetracked.
So it's interesting because you're not even complaining that you guys would get a crate of MREs while 10th group was eating foie gras and bratwurst. You're just more taken back by the fact you couldn't do your job.
Oh, yes. No, I thought the shit with the sugar was part of the beauty of being, you know, an elite operator, was, you know, being able to take the shit with the sugar. I was fine with that. Not, you know, being lied to or being manipulated, or ultimately being bullied, which would happen sometimes in your career. The part of me that wanted to be successful in the military couldn't control the part of me that, you know, wasn't going to put up with that.
Right.
And so, you know, I'm not the best example. If you read my book, I give some good advice, but I'm not the best example of how to be a great soldier.
Well, advice comes from learning, and you've done a lot of learning, right?
Yeah.
So what was it like? So what time frame, what years are we talking about right now?
For which job?
For SF while you're in 3rd group.
Okay. So I joined 20th group in 91 or 92. I went on active duty in 95. I went to the Q course in 96. And so I got medically retired in 2000.
Okay. So about 4 years bouncing around Africa. What was your mission? What was the situation like? Because you talk about these restrictions. What were the concerns at the time?
Well, you know how SF guys are. I mean, we went over there and everybody around us, you know, was in love with us. You know, we went over there and won the hearts and minds of people, and not through just pure manipulation, but through just actually caring. You know, I mean, if you're going to be a Green Beret, you should actually care about helping people, because that's part of what your, you know, job is. And so it's not just killing people. It might be healing them and just helping them might be the mission. So What specific? I forgot, Dave. Specifically, yes.
That's okay. I'm just saying for you, because we don't hear about the GWAT as much anymore, or we don't hear about the time prior to the GWAT as much anymore. So in Africa at the time, ISIS wasn't a concern. Like, what was your mission in Africa?
Training. Yeah. Training. Yeah, training. You might do medical support, but it was usually a training mission or a JSET mission, and there was just a lot of downtime for the medics to do medical stuff. Mm-hmm. I had one person in Swaziland bring their grandfather in a wheelbarrow like 8 miles through the mountains in Swaziland to be seen. And, he had polio. So there was nothing I could do, but that was the environment I was in. And I wanted to be a doctor. That was a phase of my life where it wasn't important to run around and shoot people. Like, I wanted to heal people. Like, I really loved being a medic. And usually when I love something, I'm really good at it. So, and then I kind of lost my love for it over time and just moved on.
Was that burnout, or was it due to bureaucracy, just the Army doing the Army thing?
It mainly the medical field with the paperwork. That would be the biggest thing, is the paperwork in the medical field has gotten so bad. If paperwork or schoolwork or sitting still and writing and thinking like that and behaving like that, if that stresses you out because you're too much like a chimpanzee, like I am, then it wasn't attractive anymore. If I could go treat people and not have to do the paperwork, I would stand on my feet and treat people from daylight till dark. So that was the main thing. The other thing was the trauma.
Right.
Is over time, when I became a 911 paramedic, I didn't realize how traumatized I was. I didn't realize that I was walking around with an internal volume that was so high that I was constantly stressed out. My blood pressure was constantly up. So I started seeing, murder, suicide stuff, and veterans coming home and, dying. And I just didn't want to see it anymore.
Yeah. Now, are you talking about after you were out, or when you were still
Right. This was after Ramadi.
Yeah.
So this was after killing a bunch of folks, surviving a bunch of attacks, feeling like Superman, coming back home and realizing that you're nothing.
Okay.
So
you got medically discharged in 2000. Now, I don't want to go. The story of your medical condition is, people have to buy the book. People have to read it. Like, it is, I had to take it in chunks because I could feel everything. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Do you want me to give a sample?
You can give a teaser, but I really
no. That's right. We talked about that earlier. We'll wait.
Yeah. Okay. Is this what you're going to talk about? In the
no, in case you did, but if you wanted to just mention it, I was medically retired from the Army because they did a surgery on my bladder that went sideways, and they had to go back in and do an emergency surgery right after the initial surgery. And when they did that, they ripped open the head of my penis, and multiple surgeries came after that. I was discharged with incontinence, and I was still in my 30s in a Green Beret, and when all that was going on. So it led to a divorce with my wife and kids, and so it was the worst, most traumatic time of my life. It's a story that I've never heard anybody else tell.
Oh, no.
From
me
that
neither.
aspect of
Yeah.
having trauma to your penis. Short of that guy that had his penis cut off by his wife or girlfriend,
Oh,
and she
Bob
rode down the road and
Yeah.
threw it out the window. He's got me beat, but he's the only guy I know of that's got me beat.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess he made a recovery because didn't he go on to do porn or a porn after that?
Well, you know, with today's technology, they could put a big old black penis on you, you know, and you could be in porn and have make a lot of money doing that, I'm sure.
Everybody's got a path. So yeah, and what you just described is the perfect kind of teaser for it, but you go into some detail that, like I said, I could feel it. But anyway, so you leave in 2001. What did you do between that and 9/11?
So I got medically retired in May of 2000. The next day, I went to work as a paramedic in Rutherford County in Middle Tennessee,
Right.
in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. The next day, I went to work. I was of the generation and the mindset that if you didn't have a job, you were worthless.
Right.
You were sorry as hell. So, you know, when I realized I was getting put out of the military, the only certification I had was being a nationally registered paramedic. Everything else that I had done in the military wouldn't get me a job doing anything.
Yeah.
So, you know, you can't even get a job as a cop anymore, being a Green Beret or a Ranger, unless you have a college degree.
Yeah.
So, I just went with it. And so the next day I was working as a 911 paramedic, and I did that for the next 2 years until ultimately I went to become a federal air marshal because of 9/11.
And I want to say that we are skipping a lot of personal stories and anecdotes and everything, because while you were a paramedic at the station was the, I believe, second ass kicking you delivered that is detailed in this book.
In that year. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I used to.
In that year.
I think most people from our community either were like myself, or, you know, their best friend was like me or something. You know, we're not too far away from being that or whatever. And so, you know, I grew up fighting. I didn't like being bullied. And so I had just got put out of the military. The trauma from that surgery, the trauma from my divorce, my best friend was having an affair with my wife. I let that go, and the divorce was going fine. And as soon as I started seeing this hot female cop, my ex-wife started causing drama, and my ex-best friend started causing drama. So it's very detailed in the book, but I just told him, I said, well, let's just meet and settle it. So my best friend in my life had become my nemesis, and I put him in the ER. And so maybe 6 months after that, my hand had healed up pretty good. You know, being a paramedic, short of being an air marshal, being a paramedic was the best job I had for getting dates. That would be an appropriate way of putting it. And so I was getting all the dates I wanted. And this one nurse that I had contacted, one of the other paramedics, was seeing her. And so he had a problem with it. And I was cool. I was like, I'm sorry.
No, you said you contacted her, but she gave you her number and told you she was single.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's an important part. Yeah. So anyways, she was just one of 3 or 4 nurses or paramedics I was messing around with at the time. And he was engaged to somebody and seeing people on the side. And so when that conflicted, you know, he called me up and addressed it. And I actually liked the guy. Like, I liked him. And he was just being a real jerk to me, just talking down to me. And so within a minute or so, I just got mad. And once a fighting age male crosses me, all I want to do is kill him.
Right.
So I just become a chimpanzee, a sociopath. And so all I wanted to do was after that. So there was no rush. I was like, okay, all right, that's how you feel about it. That's your woman. I need to stay away. I get it. So about 2 weeks later, I bump into him at shift changeover, and I tell him to meet me out in the garage. And we sorted it out.
Hey guys, our show is sponsored by GhostBed. Check them out, please. They make awesome mattresses, awesome pillows, awesome bedding. GhostBed provides high quality and super comfortable award-winning mattresses crafted in the US and Canada. Did you know that 60% of US adults report being too hot when they're trying to sleep? That's me. I'm a sweaty little baby. That's why we designed all of our products with cooling features so you stay comfortable and asleep all night long. Pair any of our mattresses with GhostBed's award-winning adjustable base and get the ultimate sleep experience. GhostBed rules the family-owned business, 60,000 plus 5-star reviews. They have sleep experts on staff with 20 plus years of experience. So if you have any questions, you can hit them up and ask them, maybe what kind of mattresses work for you. 20 plus year warranty. That's 2 times the industry standard. Free shipping and returns on mattresses. Most of the products ship out within 24 hours. They have in-house customer support and sleep experts chilling in Plantation, Florida. It rules. It's the best. They give you 101 nights risk-free to make sure that these beds are right for you. If you don't like it after 101 nights, you can send it back, full refund. When you purchase a GhostBed mattress, your comfort guaranteed. I'm reading it right now, and it's capital letters, guaranteed. Okay? They do the right thing, and they're a great company. If you're not sure which GhostBed's right for you, like I said before, you could take their mattress quiz online, or you can give a call to one of their sleep experts, and they'll help you with exactly what you possibly could need, what works for you and what doesn't. And the best news about this is, Team House listeners and viewers, you get an extra 10% off site-wide for a limited time. You just go to ghostbed.com/house and use the code HOUSE at checkout. One more time, that's ghostbed.com/house with the code HOUSE, HOUSE, at checkout for an extra 10% off site-wide. I want to thank GhostBed for their continued support. I want to thank all the fans that listen and watch for their continued support. Without you guys, we are nothing. So thank you for supporting the show, and thank you for supporting the companies that help support the show. ghostbed.com/house for 10% off. Made in the US, made in Canada. Shout out to our brothers in Canada. They rock. Check them out. I love GhostBed. Thanks, guys.
Hey guys, I want to tell all of you today about a new newsletter that we're launching that encompasses both the Team House podcast, the Eyes On podcast, and the High Side news outlet, which I run with Sean Naylor. The newsletter is going to be once a week. It's going to come into your inbox, and you're going to get the most current podcasts on Eyes On and the Team House and whatever's topical or current on the high side. So it's another way for us to get the information out to you, as social media algorithms are pretty iffy and you never really know what you're going to get. So this is a once a week email. It'll slide into your inbox, and it will have, the greatest hits of that week.
It's really good, man. I'm checking it out.
The website for it is teamhousepodcast.kit.com/join. teamhousepodcast.kit.com/join. You go there and you enter into your email list, or you enter your email into the little thing on the website, and you're good to go. And that'll be it. So we really appreciate your support and hope you'll consider signing up.
Where's the link?
The link will also be down in the description if you're looking for it there.
And that's teamhousepodcast.kit, KIT, Kilo India Tango.com/join. Yeah. Yes. So from there, from being a paramedic, and it's in the book, guys. Get the book. It's entertaining as hell. You'll love it. So 9/11 happens. There's that big surge for air marshals. And initially, before they started lowering the standards, they had incredibly high standards, right? And a lot of former soft guys were going into it. It was kind of a network. And so you went through all this training. They have very precise shooting standards because you're an air marshal. Apparently, you also meet a lot of women on the job. And what happened with you is what happened with a lot of the guys, which I think is one of the reasons why the standards lowered, was triple canopy starts up. It's kind of word of mouth. It's all like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 guy. It's all soft guys initially. That's all they're taking. The pay is what, $600, $1,200 a day. Like, the pay is outrageous, right?
Yeah. So, you're exactly right. I mean, the two things that I think removed all the good people, or most of the good people, from that program, or pushed them out, was when the Secret Service took over and kind of changed the way they ran that department. A lot of people were like, we're not doing this. This isn't what we signed on for. And I was part of that group. And so there were so many opportunities, because they recruited so high for the air marshal program. The standards were so high that a lot of people that became air marshals qualified in that initial push in 2003, 2004 to Iraq and Afghanistan as contractors, met that standard. So it was an easy transition.
Mm-hmm. Because triple canopy, people may not know this, but triple canopy was known as the soft, like triple canopy was the elite security company, and they had a very rigorous qualification course.
Yeah. Well, this is the part of my career that I think, is more interesting to me. So, but I was there from the beginning, and I know all the key players very well. And my last deployment with Triple Canopy, I started in February of 2004, and my last deployment with Triple Canopy was in 2012. So I saw the beginning and the ending of Triple Canopy. And the company that I started with, there's nothing I've done in my lifetime that compares to that organization. It was amazing. Mm-hmm. I mean, absolutely amazing. I was a very average guy that was very grateful to be there. In 2012, when I went back, it was the most budget bullshit company I had ever deployed with.
Yeah.
So it was a shell of itself. And so what happens is what Triple Canopy did in the beginning was they said, we're going to have the best men, the best pay, and the best equipment. And for the first 7 months, they did that.
Right.
The next 7 months, they lost sight of that. 14 months into it, they started changing. And each year, over time, they got further and further away from what they initially started as. And because in the beginning, they cared about the guys on the ground. When you have a corporate office that's full of operators that knows that they're there to support the guys with body armor on, it's different than, because I worked in corporate with EODT later on, the corporate security culture thinks the corporation is the important part, right, and the guys on the ground need to listen up and do what they're told. And it's the complete opposite. If you want to operate the right way, if you want it to be non-toxic, healthy, if you want everything to be on the right frequency, Triple Canopy did it right for the first 7 months. And now I'm not saying Blackwater, because I worked several years with Blackwater, and Blackwater and Eric Prince was a great company to work for, but they still weren't Triple Canopy in the beginning. Nobody did what they did.
Right. Well, and when you just think of, I guess the economics of it, you have all the GWAT starts, and you have all these soft guys that are within 3 to 5 years of getting out, right? Maybe staying up on their skills, whatever else. Well, that pool dries up eventually, and not only that, but where Triple Canopy can pay guys $800-900 a day because they're giving like the cream of the crop. Their pitches, it's all soft. Like these guys, they're all professionals. They all know what they're doing. But then you have companies like Custer Battles and these other shit shows.
I haven't heard that name in a long time. Right.
You have these other shit shows. First off, you need more and more people, and you need them faster. The second thing is you have all these other companies coming in and going, well, they say they're going to do it for, $2,200 per man day. We can do it for, $1,200 per man day. And we can get those same guys. They can't, but nobody ever checks that afterwards.
You're absolutely correct. It becomes what they call lean management style from a corporate aspect. It's just about the margins of profit. It literally becomes just a business model.
Yeah.
And like EODT, like whoever thought it would be a good idea to take South Africans, white South Afrikaans, and put them in charge of black Ugandans. But that's what they did, and other companies followed because you were once paying an expat, whether it be somebody from America or a qualified person from Britain or wherever else, but you were once paying that person. Let's just say you're paying them $500 at the low end to do the security at the front gate or whatever. Shit work that nobody wants to do. That needs to be done, and it needs to be done by somebody that cares just enough to stay awake and do their job. And so when you can pay Ugandans $500 or $600 a month to do the same job, and they'll actually take more pride in it because it's so much more money than they can make. It's an opportunity worth leaving Uganda to be away from their family, to be in harm's way. It makes that big of a difference. But yet they're being managed by South Africans. So I was actually involved in, I don't know if you remember, but in Baghdad, there was a South African that was killed by a Ugandan, and then the Ugandan killed himself at one of the bases. And I did the investigation on that. And it was that whole concept of just racism. They had just harassed those guys so much, and all those guys wanted to do was pull security, make money for their family, go home. Right. And so they would do things like have them up all night running from one guard shack to the other. 5 minutes later, run again. So they would just run them, so they couldn't fall asleep. Just real brutal kind of things. So again, I can get off track on that and get into a whole different chapter of life. So it was pretty awful. After 2004, 2005, in 2006, I went to work for USIS with the ATA program, and that was, other than being part of Team Miami in Ramadi, Iraq, with Triple Canopy, an original member of that team. This was the next best job I'd ever had, working with the Anti-Terrorist Assistance Program. Yeah. It was wonderful. But after that, I started bouncing to SOC. I went to EOD Corporate. I went to Blackwater. I've been with Tiger Swan, with Olive Group. And I may be missing a few, unfortunately. I can't remember all of them, but most of it was shit.
Yeah.
Most of it was shit. Blackwater, when Eric was there, they had it right. They did some cowboy stuff, but I'm not, I'm not going to judge how savage people are going to be in a scenario because I know the scenarios I had to be in. What I criticize people and what I can't stand and what I'm against is people lying about what they did or didn't do, especially to profit from it. So I don't have a problem with people that trained all their life to go kill folks and they go over there and kill folks because that's what we sent people to do. And we should support that a little bit more than what we do.
Let's talk about your time because, you know, you talk about being in combat, and for anybody who thinks that you weren't in combat because you were working for Triple Canopy, let's talk about your time in, you know, Team Miami, Ramadi at that time. How many ambushes or contacts would you say you were in during that like 3 or 4 year period?
Okay, so in 2004 in Ramadi, and not just in Ramadi, but we were the team assigned to Ramadi, we were attacked over 20 times. And when I say attacked, it involved an RPG, a machine gun. We were attacked. It wasn't like somebody walked across the street with an AK-47 and looked at us hard. You know, we were attacked over 20 times. So our principal was attacked even before the team got there in Ramadi. And
the ambassador,
his limo was down hard, and there was a DC reporter in the vehicle as well. And it was after that event. I think that was January or February '04. And I don't know that a news reporter after that ever went to Ramadi. They would go to Fallujah. They would go to Camp Fallujah. But I don't know of one single reporter or anything that after Ramadi. I mean, nobody wanted to go to Ramadi.
Yeah. Now, in the book, you tell a funny story about your principal, the ambassador, right? Needed to be at a lot of the same meetings that Mattis needed to be at. And that he was, I don't want to say he was your canary in the coal mine because basically you guys wanted to get out. You wanted to get out ahead of him, right?
Yeah, it's a funny story now. But, you know, when you start realizing that every time you go to a meeting that General Mattis is at, he gets attacked going or coming back from every time. And so when you realize that pattern, you know, operating at the tier 1 level, you have the freedom of going, we're going to change tactics. You know, when you're in the conventional military and they say the convoy speed is going to be 45 to 50 miles an hour, or you can't come in and say, hey, dude, we're doing 120 today. Right. We're going to have a kilometer in between us. By the time you make contact, I'll be rolling up far enough back where I can dismount, take the attention off. You know what I mean? Yeah. We started doing things different, and it worked.
But with Mattis, you guys started like making sure that you always left before his convoy did.
That's right. That was our primary launch indicator. Was we had to leave Camp Ramadi, we had to leave the government center, we had to leave Camp Fallujah, wherever it was that we were meeting, we had to leave before General Mattis because he stopped and fought. So in protection, you're taught to run,
right?
To go against your instinct. Well, for some people, it's their instinct to run. But, you know, when you're attacked, you're supposed to fight back. You're supposed to be trained to that level that your instinct is to fight back. And General Mattis, I don't know if he'll ever write a book, but, you know, tell me another 2-star general that you know of that every time he got attacked, which was regularly, they stopped and fought. And he was right there with his Marines doing that. So, and I've got a story of General Kelly also. You know, we took him down to Hilla, and he told a story about, you know, the first guy he killed over there from his Humvee. And so, you know, these are general officers that are getting out there with their men and participating in the war. And so I have nothing but respect for General Mattis. But yes, we got attacked a lot, but he got attacked every time he left the base, as far as I can remember.
What was that? Because, you had been in Ranger Battalion, you had been in SF, all sort of in a peacetime military. What was that first contact like for you?
The first contact I was in, it went great at first. So when we got ambushed, we had the principal with us. I was in the follow vehicle, and I saw 4 gunmen out my window. And we were going pretty slow. And so the call came, RPG gunners, reverse out. And so one guy, the video's online of this attack, but it's from one vehicle. So you're only hearing him on the radio in his vehicle because it's being recorded by the camera. There's 5 vehicles total and 5 different versions of what's going on. But unlike with Tim Kennedy, everybody basically tells the same story, right, just from their perspective.
How many grenades did you guys throw that day? I want to know how many grenades you threw personally.
Well, out of the 50 that I had, there was only 3 or 4. No, I'm just kidding. I had 1 grenade, and it was strapped, to my kit. But I never used that in battle. Amateur.
One, yeah, just one.
But I was literally taking the slack. Now we're an armored vehicle, so if you're going to crack the door,
right,
you better know what you're doing, because you don't want to unbutton your armor unless you really need to, and you've thought that through. And I had them dead to rights, and we were starting to turn around. And I literally have the perfect scenario. If you're right-handed, cracking the back door on the left side, looking back at 3 gunmen on a porch and 1 in the yard, and they're both, kind of they're all at the low ready. So I kind of had them dead to rights. So I'm taking the slack out, and then he hit the gas, and that slung me. And so now I'm sliding across the seat in the BMW, in the leather seat, to get to the other window so I can keep an eye so I can still see them, because now we're turning around, and that's when the RPG hit the road and shattered my window and flattened all the tires.
Yeah. And so, I assume you guys had run flats. You didn't need to do a recovery. You didn't have to do a recovery or anything like that. You could
we would have been dead.
Yeah.
Dave, that out of all the scenarios I've been in, and from a protection standpoint, I've been in a lot of scenarios from a protection standpoint of how to play these things out. And if any of our vehicles that day would have stopped rolling, everybody in that vehicle would have been in trouble.
Yeah,
would have been in big trouble. They had us on both sides of the road. It was a major ambush that they were setting up. And it just looked like we caught them off guard.
Yeah. So, you talk about internal volume, and you had mentioned it a couple times, like before this incident, or before this time of your life. Can you tell us what the internal volume meant for you?
Yeah. So I guess the best way to explain this, if you go sit in a room where it's quiet, turn your phone off, turn the TV, it's just quiet, there's nothing, and sit there for 15 minutes. Now, if that seems like torture, your internal volume is probably high.
Right.
You're probably gritting your teeth. You're probably ready. Well, what animal in nature can't just sit,
right,
and be calm and relax in the quiet? So if you can't do that, which I couldn't, that's an example of, so we've got all these lies and excuses and these biases we tell ourselves to justify our behavior. Our self-talk can justify almost anything we want it to. And so what I realized was my internal volume. It wasn't whether I had a new car. It wasn't whether I had a great job. It wasn't whether I had the beautiful, hottest girlfriend. What made me happy was how I felt on the inside, that internal volume. And when it was low, those were the best times of my life. And it was like, so how do you have a low internal? It's like, oh, you have to be mindful. Well, what does that mean? Well, so then you start down that road. And so I took the path of mindfulness by walking the Appalachian Trail. And that was when I woke up to to actually recognize that what's going on inside me is my life. What everybody else thinks and what everything else is going on is something totally different. This experience, whether you believe in the Bible, whether you believe we're a computer program like the Matrix, no matter what you believe, at the end of the day, how you feel about this experience, how you feel in your container. We all look a little different, some fat, some tall, some gifted, some not, whatever. It's a temporary container made up of bacteria, fungus, all kinds of stuff from the universe that we're in right now, traveling through this experience, and how you feel is what mattered. And I discovered that on the Appalachian Trail, walking that, spending that 4 months by myself. I found organically how to just be present. Like I got to a point, Dave, where I couldn't think about the future or the past. Now imagine going to sleep and not thinking about what happened today. Imagine going to sleep and not thinking about your childhood. Imagine waking up and not worried about work. Like I got to a state of nirvana naturally by just being in the woods. And if you look historically at mythology and all teachings from the East, people go out into the forest. They go out into the woods. They go out to the desert. They go and spend time alone as something happens. And that something that happens is real. And it's a detox. So your ego is toxic. And the bigger your ego, the more toxic. And so I want to mention this. What I love about your podcast, Dave, you and Jack, is you guys are the real deal. But you guys don't have an ego. Like your platform, your mannerisms, your attitudes, the way you guys do things, it isn't from this egotistical place. And I dig that. So
thank you. That's
killing the ego is what my life is about now. And the hard thing with killing your ego is it's the most painful thing you'll ever do. Because to kill your ego means I'm not a Green Beret anymore. I'm not a Ranger.
Right.
I'm not some badass fist fighter from back in the day. I'm just an organism in this universe, and how I feel is what matters. How the energy I put out, the frequency I operate, how I interact with animals and humans, all that matters. And so it's a paradigm shift. It's a complete awakening where you just search for truth. There's no more manipulation. There's no more room for lies. Like it's the truth, and that's all you want.
So it's very interesting, and I look forward to when we get into sort of that journey of self-discovery. But one of the reasons I asked you about internal volume is because I think that there are a lot of ideas or terms around it, but I like the idea of internal volume, and I think that for a lot of guys in the soft community, or a lot of people, not guys but girls, a lot of people who join the military or high-performing types of jobs, that they have that drive and they have that internal volume, and they're always kind of seeking, right? And I think one of the things that many of us loved about war was that finally the external volume matched the internal volume. And finally,
You got the green light.
right? Finally, finally the world has come up to our standard.
Yeah.
And it's not screaming anymore because now there's equilibrium. And I think that so many people, when they finally find that and then they lose it, it's worse than not having found it.
Yeah, I like that. I think I'm glad you kept talking about this, because what I failed to connect with the military is we're familiar with inflate and deflate.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be able to inflate and deflate. Be a tier 2 guy, especially operate at tier 1 level. You got to be able to inflate and deflate well. And so what does that mean? So internal volume, think about a volume knob set on 0 or set on 10. When you set that on 0, just peace, just calm, just stillness. And that's what we really want. We all deep down want to feel safe. We want to feel value, worth. We want to be calm, like you feel when you're romantic or having a nice meal, that parasympathetic part of your brain. Mm-hmm. We don't want to live in that chimpanzee part of our brain, that sympathetic response, that fight, flight, freeze, fawn, hide. We don't want to live in that. So learning how to inflate and deflate properly is something we learn well. And since they promote a monstrous side of us, so when you have that rage, that internal volume, that unpacked trauma from your childhood, all this stuff that you're suppressing so that you can be successful. Because if you couldn't suppress that, you'd be in prison. Right? The guys that can suppress it become cops and military guys. The guys that can't suppress it become criminals. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, when you think about that knob, it's like, okay, I'm flying into the objective. If I'm mindful, I'm at a 2. I'm focused on my breathing. I know my job. When I step off, I'm going left. I need to make sure I don't do this. Next phase, we're going to be here. I need to make sure I don't do that. You're calm. You're thinking it in. You're ready. You're ready for anything. You're ready to flow and go, right? But when that guy comes through that door, you need to go from a 2 to an 8. Mm-hmm. You don't need to go to a 10. You don't need to freak out, but you need to get on it, right? And then you need to come back down, go back to your breathing, go. So that's a mindful approach to being an operator in combat. And so I think when you get the green light to be monstrous, that monster, and everybody has it. And Carl Jung, talks a great deal about the shadow, mm-hmm. The monstrous. Jordan Peterson talks about, the monster, or like us, monster killers. When you get the green light to do what you've been trained to do and the freedom to do it, it's intoxicating. Mm-hmm. It was the highlight of my life. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a purity.
Serving in Ramadi with Triple Canopy was the highlight of my life. If I would have died there or died when I got home, I would have lived a complete life. So everything I'm doing now is extra. It's a cherry on top.
Okay.
But like you said, once you come home and you don't have that, it's tough. And it was, man. I spent a couple years homeless. It hasn't been hugs and singing sweet songs. It's been tough.
Yeah, so let's talk about that then, because you spend that time in Ramadi, and then you do more of the JSET, right? You do more of the training, the supervision, the corporate stuff, and and I think one of the things that you said hits on why a lot of veterans have a hard time dealing with the trauma, and not just trauma from war, but trauma that's been carried forward and then just sort of like condensed in war, is that it was the highlight of your life and it's hard to find anything. And so, guys and girls come home from that experience and it was the highlight. And now they have to deal with paying bills. They have to deal with, taxes. They have to deal with like social etiquette, all this other stuff. And I think for a lot of, like it all gets lumped under post-traumatic stress. But I think for a lot of them, it's like,
Right.
I think for a lot of them, it's like, I did what I wanted to do. Like, what do I got now? Another 30, 40 years? What am I going to do for 30 or 40 years?
Right. That's a great point. I think it's all under the umbrella of PTSD. I agree with you when people talk about it. But like you're saying, there's lots of subcategories that fall under that. And I can tell you from experience that part of the reason why veterans are blowing their brains out in the VA parking lot is because of the way they're treated at the VA.
Yeah.
I can tell you that when you come home from killing folks and almost being killed several times, and everybody on your team makes it home, and you're so grateful that that's your story, that everybody on your team came home after all that, and you struggle to get medical care and dental care and end up not getting those things. But then illegal people, like it's being promoted on television, like half of America or a third of America supports illegal people in this country getting full medical benefits, and combat veterans aren't. Mm-hmm. If you're not 100% disabled, you don't have dental care in the VA. Mm-hmm. And so unless you have a job that provides dental care after that, which, there's problems there. So from a mental health standpoint, when you're looking at, okay, I'm getting older, and getting old is not for sissies. Like, it's tough getting old and not being able to do what you used to do on your mental health is challenged as you get old. And so it's a lot tougher when you turn on the news and you see Americans fighting, politicians fighting for illegals, and you've been left out there basically to rot. It makes you question everything.
Mm-hmm. So during this high part of the GWAT, not just your time in Ramadi, but when security is still like a very thriving industry, right? They're still throwing money at it. The pay for the individuals have gone down, the equipment's gone down, but the contracts are bigger, right? And you're finding your way through this. What are you thinking? Are you looking for a career? Are you looking for satisfaction? Are you looking for a rush? Like, what are you doing?
Well, when I was with Triple Canopy in 2004, I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with them. And then just, Blackwater won the contract, and they offered me like $300 less to do the same job in Ramadi. And I was like, no, this was a new team. I knew how dangerous Ramadi. I was like, no, I'm good. And so that's the only reason why I turned it down. And so when I left there and went to USIS ATA program, I was like, I'm going to spend the rest of my life doing this job. I mean, I loved it, and it was sustainable. Like, it wasn't dangerous. It had everything that you would want, except, not being shot at or blown up like I was in Ramadi, which I enjoyed. But long term, that's not,
sure.
You don't want to keep doing that long term. So it was a great, I did what I wanted to do. I proved to myself that I was a man. That's what we want to do, right? We want approval. We want to be somebody. At the end of the day, if you really slow down and look in the mirror deep enough, there's still a little boy in there. Mm-hmm. And so if you don't bring that little boy with you along the way, he's still in there somewhere curled up, and that traumatized little boy. So all that came to fruition. Everything culminated in my life. And so it was like being a professional football player and winning the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. Like, I know what it feels like now to be that person. It's the same internal feeling to be at the top of your game and the top organization in the most dangerous little city in the world, doing what you do at the highest level. And then to walk away from that and have another opportunity was great. So but I'm getting sidetracked. My ex-wife sent me an email and said if I didn't come home, what had happened is she had got pregnant with my ex-best friend, and they were going to get married. And so now everything changed. So the deal I made with her for child support, my deployment rotation, everything was perfect. Everybody was happy. And then she got pregnant and decided to get married, and everything changed. And so I had to resign from that position, come home and be a full-time parent so that I wouldn't lose custody of my children. And so I left that job, probably the best job I could have ever had, because I didn't want to give up custody of my children. And I know a lot of guys with our background would have kept working, but I just, at that time, my kids meant everything to me.
Sure. Can you tell us a little bit about the job? Because, a lot of people may not be familiar with USIS or ATA or.
Oh, yeah. So it's 9-week deployments for the bomb teams or the incident countermeasure teams. So what we would do was we'd go into a place like Indonesia or India, a place where friends of our country, and this program had been around at the time for 20-something years. And it's just kind of a rapport builder with nations, a nation builder. So we would go over and teach the Indonesian Special Operations Bomb Unit how to build and how to disrupt IEDs of all different origins. And then after they learned how to disrupt those IEDs, we would teach them post-blast scene analysis, how to come in. So like when we were in Indonesia, Bali had the second attack, and I was actually in Kuta in Bali at the time of that attack. And so for that team to go in there after the Raja restaurant was blown up, they would go in and look for evidence of bomb parts and things of that nature. So we would teach them those basic things, and then just go to another country. So you would get your equipment set up for a week, and then you teach them for 8 weeks straight and fly home. And it was great money, great work environment, great mission. And I could have done that until retirement. But again, life takes you where it takes you. And you got to meet life where it takes you. And that's something I've definitely learned now. So I really fought it at the time. If it was to happen again, I wouldn't have. I would have just, went along with it and not got so upset and tried to, work from a more mindful place. But I just said, okay, I'll just resign and go home and just sit at home to spite her. Because now that I'm home, I don't have to pay $2,000 a month child support. So she just cut her nose off to spite her face, and so did I.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you come back to the States, and what's the job market like for you here? What is the future for Lee when he looks at it?
If I don't deploy, I was in demand. I'd just come out of Ramadi for 14 months. There was a lot of things going on in Israel and other places. There was a lot of opportunities that I turned down because I couldn't deploy anymore. I mean, really, really good opportunities. The agency stuff, a lot of stuff, and I just couldn't do it. So luckily, when I was in 20th Group, a buddy of mine, John Nettles, was working with Alan Broslin. Alan owned Tees in West Memphis, which became Olive Group, and then Olive sold it back to Alan. But where was I going with that?
What like your future, like your
Right,
the
right.
job market?
So because of my relationship with John, and because John knew we were over in Iraq at the same time doing different things, he knew I had been in Ramadi and Fallujah shooting folks while doing protection work. So they got a contract to teach pre-deployment training for the SEAL teams in West Memphis. And so they contacted me to be the lead instructor for all their pre-deployment PSD work, their protection work, high threat protection work. So I put together a live fire, eight-day live fire course from scratch, specifically for the SEALs. And if it weren't for that, I wouldn't have been connected to the community at all anymore. And so I was working part-time as a paramedic again. Luckily, I left there on good terms, and they welcomed me back part-time. And so I was teaching part-time, doing paramedic part-time. And I did that for a few years until things had changed enough to where she allowed me to start deploying again.
And you know, it's interesting because you mentioned like high threat PSD, personal security detail. That was something new that came out of the came out of the GWAT, right? You can't go to Executive International or whatever whatever those schools are, and learn how to be a bodyguard in that kind of environment. Like you almost have to have a military background in order to do that job.
You have to have a soft background, I think. I'll go a step further and say you have to have a soft arm. High threat PSD is a thinking man's game. Doing PSD in a combat zone is a tier 1 mission. And so you're 100% correct. Prior to GWAT, I know maybe Dev Group did some stuff like that, but you know, Delta was the only guys really doing PSD. You know, like they did Schwarzkopf's detail. So Mad Max that ran the first 2 selection classes for Triple Canopy. So if you were in the first class or the second class in the original Triple Canopy in the beginning in 2004, you had to pass Mad Max's standards. And they were very high. They were Delta standards. And they're no joke. Anybody that went through there will tell you they were Delta standards. They couldn't get enough people through the pipeline, so they removed Mad Max and put him in another capacity so they could get larger classes through because the contract grew. And that would be the second. That's when you start looking at the second 7 months of Triple Canopy in the beginning. And that's when you start talking about things you talked about too. You know, you start getting a different level of guy in 2004 or from 2004 to 2005, from 2005 to 2006. You start, the pay gets less, higher level guys go do different things. Lesser qualified guys replace those guys. And by the end in Afghanistan and Iraq, you had guys that didn't have soft backgrounds, some guys that just had law enforcement doing jobs that once were only held by soft guys. And there's a reason. Now I'm not saying, let me caveat this. My experience in Ramadi, the 2-4 Marines and 2-5 Marines, the infantry did more than the special ops and what we did ever did. So these infantry guys that we send to war to places like Fallujah and Ramadi that fight day and night every day in their deployment saw a lot more and did a lot more than anybody like me ever did. So I'm not trying to say that. I just want to make sure I make that distinguish. But for these skill sets, these tier 1 type jobs, you know, you need to have a soft background because you need to be able to lead a team or be the bottom man on the team. You need to be able to do, you need to be able to inflate and deflate to the full spectrum of whatever might happen, because like when we were protecting Ambassador Stu Jones, going to Hilla, going to Baghdad, going to Fallujah, going to downtown Ramadi, crossing the border into Jordan, we didn't have military support. We were 5 vehicles, 15 men with one principal, roaming all of Iraq. And a lot of times we got shot. I got shot at 4 different times by friendly fire, and somebody from, I was on a podcast once and I said this wrong. Somebody from Cornell, I said Stanford, but it was Cornell. Somebody from Cornell that was doing their doctorate or whatever on fratricide contacted me because they had heard that I had 4 different incidents where I had been shot at by friendly fire, and they wanted to talk to me about that. But it was 04 during that time. Really was it was a crazy time.
Oh yeah, a friend of
mine.
I
got to point this out. I got to point this out because I don't want to forget it. It's in my book and it's driving me crazy. The devil of Ramadi sniper was not Chris Kyle. Okay. In 2004, the devil of Ramadi sniper was killing Marines and Army men and contractors left and right. And the devil of Ramadi was Juba. He ultimately killed one of the replacements, Bama, that replaced me when Blackwater replaced us. He ultimately killed him about 2 weeks later. But Chris Kyle was not the devil of Ramadi. That was a sniper that was killing Americans, not an American that was killing bad guys. That was a bad guy that was killing Americans, was the devil of Ramadi.
Thank you for clarifying that. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Okay, so you start to work for the Olive Group, or you get in with that? You get in with Tiger Swan, with some of that sexy pipeline infiltration work.
Well, yeah. So I was living like John J. Rambo. I was homeless working for cash, on construction jobs or whatever else. That's where some of us that, end up. And so a guy from Blackwater reached out to me and said, there was this DAPL protest at Standing Rock, and they were paying like $500 a day to pull security. And I was like, heck yeah, man. I was in bad shape, and so that was a chance for me to try to get straightened out financially and get my feet back under me. And I went to work there, and in a few months, if I go somewhere and I like it, it's something it usually goes well. Mm-hmm. And when I go somewhere I don't, it usually doesn't. So I went there and it went well. And the next thing I know, I'm the deputy project manager for Tiger Swan, running the entire state of Iowa, mm-hmm. where the pipeline ran through, where the valve sites run through. And during 2017, there were 2 females that were leading this band of domestic terrorists who were doing millions of dollars of damage on the valve sites with the pipeline, the control centers, and putting holes in the actual pipes. So the FBI finally closed in on them, and they finally arrested them, and that job just went away. So, I had been promoted up to a deputy project manager. JP, who I worked for, who was the program manager, like I was like, okay, like this is going to work out. Like I'll stay with these guys. This is another Delta operated company like Triple Canopy. Like I'm doing well. I fit in well. They like my leadership style, and I'm happy. And I really was. My mental health was great. Mm-hmm. And so people like us if we're in a position where we feel good about ourselves, we release good hormones. We thrive. We lose our belly fat. We get off our ass. And when we don't, when we're in a job where we don't feel like we're high enough, or we're in a job we don't want to do and we have to do, or whatever, we have a lot of negative energy and negative self-talk, and we can lie to ourselves and ignore that, but it can make us, not a good version of ourselves. And that's where addiction and separating from our suffering, that's where all that stuff plays in. And that's where yoga and mindfulness, that's where I was able to wake up to just how monstrous I am and just how much in denial I was about all of that.
Mm-hmm. So after Tiger Swan, like that goes away, was Facebook next for you?
No, Facebook was before that.
Oh,
Facebook went away because of two reasons. And I'm going to say the first reason, because I don't want to sound like I'm making any excuses. They politely asked me to leave. But the secondary reason for that is DEI. So Facebook was operating by DEI before there was DEI. They just didn't know it, but I did. So they wanted guys like me and guys like Steve that I won't mention his last name because I don't know if he would like that, but Steve from up in Washington State came down from Paul Allen and Bill Gates's detail to work at Facebook, and I came there at the same time, and I worked a day shift and he worked a night shift, and our job was develop Facebook's how to operate as a protection detail. And they didn't want to, we helped get them to kind of a basic level, but they didn't want to really do things right.
Right.
And after 2004 with Triple Canopy, I was going to do things right or I was going to bitch about it and leave. I couldn't not do things right anymore. I couldn't not do it. Right. So I made things kind of hard for some people there, and they were frustrated with me, and they asked me to leave, and so that was part of that not being a good place. If I would have went to Facebook and they would have said, the way you are is exactly what we're looking for, which is what Tiger Swan did, which is what Triple Canopy did, which is what Blackwater did. If I would have got that reception, I'd still be at Facebook.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of times, those companies, Microsoft, Facebook, Google, Adelson, Adelson is his name, right? Out in Vegas. Like, they want the soft guys, but they want more of a cop mentality.
Well, yes, in a way, like McDonald's details. Some of those details are very cop, Secret Service kind of oriented.
Right.
So you're all right, but I don't mind saying this, and I know what I say your channel doesn't represent. But what Facebook wanted was gays and lesbians and blacks and whites and Korean. They wanted their protection detail to look like Facebook. And that's what they did. Right. So there was lots of unqualified people that I vetted coming into the team that were voted in that were not qualified. They weren't qualified to be on a little local garden, like a Verizon cell phone store, right. Much less, protecting billionaire CEOs and COOs of corporations that have the intellectual properties of Facebook in his brain.
Right.
You're protecting that. And and not to mention the embarrassment. Like, who wants to be on a protection detail? And the only thing guys remember is you're the guy that let that happen to Zuckerberg. Like, I remember that. Everybody in the world remembers that. So you don't want to be working with idiots. And so my standard was high, and it still is. So if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it right. If not, just do it without me. I'll go do something else.
Right.
But yeah, they wanted, and they did. There was one black guy that was gay. We had one female that was a lesbian openly. They were all young, and it was just chaos. People didn't, you would drive the client to San Francisco with no backup vehicle. So we literally had Sheryl Sandberg, the COO, self-made billionaire herself, on the side of the interstate, broke down with the shift leader, because the shift leader came from Secret Service and didn't even have the wherewithal to have a backup vehicle. But I've been screaming that stuff, having ghost vehicles, doing things right.
Right.
The money was there. Let's do it right. But it's kind of like the government. Like, people just get along, everybody be happy. And if something terrible happens, just point fingers and then fix it.
Right.
It's like, well, let's be proactive.
Yeah.
Let's be a little proactive.
And I think that, like, a lot of people misinterpret, like, the idea of, it doesn't matter if a guy is a black gay guy or a woman is an open lesbian, if they know how to do the job. The problem is when you start hiring because of who they are instead of what they know and what they can do.
Let me clarify that, because I know that could be sensitive to people. You're exactly right. That's what I meant. I grew up a poor little Jewish boy in Tennessee. Like, I don't have some kind of racism towards, anybody. I've been bullied and had my own experiences in my own life and my own problems. I'm about being qualified. Mm-hmm. So yeah, everybody on the team could have been a gay or a lesbian if they were qualified.
Right.
If they had the qualification, but these people didn't.
Right.
And so the motivation, just like with DEI, the whole problem with DEI is, and here's what I ask people. You're in a bad car accident and you look up and there's a paramedic. Do you want a paramedic that is highly trained, or do you want a paramedic that is hired because of the way they look and their ideology? Mm-hmm. Now, if you ask anybody that's in a life or death situation, what do they want? If you're on an airplane and it's getting hijacked, do you want somebody like me that's going to stand up with a pistol and do whatever I got to do to get between you and the threat and get busy? Or do you want somebody that just looks and believes in a certain ideology in that position? Because I went through the Federal Law Enforcement Academy with a black female. Now, I've worked with black females that could outdo me in a lot of things, but this black female couldn't get out of a first-class seat. That's how big she was. She couldn't pass the basic shooting standards that were dropped to the FBI standards from the initial, it was the TPC, the tactical pistol course, reduced down to the the federal standard, the PCT, the practical pistol course. Yeah, so the much lower standard is she couldn't pass it. So, but guess what? She graduated. So people can think whatever they want to, but when you're on when it's a job, a fireman has to carry you out of a burning building, you got to ask yourself, you got to stop all this fighting and ask yourself, what would you want? Who would you hire to do those jobs? Do you want them to meet a standard, or do you just want them to look a certain way? Right. And so, I grew up with common sense, and I'm going to hold on to that.
Yeah. So Facebook was before Tiger Swan. So Facebook, and then the yacht detail, right? That
was, man. We could do a podcast on just one of these. Like, there's so many things when you mention them. I'm so glad you read the book, Dave. Yeah. Because there's so much in there that never gets to.
Once again, I want to say it is highly entertaining. Like, your personality shines through. It's an enjoyable read.
Yeah, so the so the yacht thing was out of desperation, and it turned into the Facebook thing. So to go to the yacht thing, we have to back up before the Facebook thing. But let me tell you, doing yacht security and protection is shit work, man. It's shit work. If you have to live with the crew, just watch a couple episodes of Below Deck. It's a tough life.
It's not the love
for
boat.
somebody like us to go spend a couple months on a yacht.
Yeah.
But I got to work with several billionaires in my life in that capacity. I got to see them with their, literally with their, their shirts off or their, drunk with their guard down. And, I got to see personal sides of them. You get to hear them in the back seat talking business with other people. You're just privy to things that I won't obviously share those type of things. But it's really interesting. I got to meet the father of the DVD, Lieber Farb. He was the father of DVD, and he spent about a month on the yacht. And, he's good friends with Kevin Costner, and he just had, you get to hear all these amazing stories from these people and exposed to different things. And then you get to see that, billionaires can be miserable.
Mm-hmm.
There were some people that I worked with, and I won't point out who, because I worked with several, but there were some of them, like Sheryl Sandberg's one of probably the best human beings I've ever met in my life. I've also met some of the worst in that group. So being a billionaire doesn't mean you're happy. There's no correlation between being a good person and being happy. There's no correlation with those things. Putting these people on pedestals like we do is ridiculous. Like when you get to see them, who they really are, most of them you wouldn't hire to mow your yard. Most of them I wouldn't hire to babysit my children. It helped me wake up to a lot of things.
So the yacht, Facebook, Tiger Swan, and then Tiger Swan goes away. So what's next?
So I take I work overseas a couple gigs during the hurricane disaster. Nothing noteworthy there. Just typical armed security shit work, 12-hour shifts, 7 days a week. Good pay, shit work, shit leadership. Good pay. And you're working with good guys usually, guys you've worked with before. So just another gig, no big deal. You learn what not to do usually on those type of gigs. And that led to, I'm not doing this no more. There's an Air Force base in my hometown, Arnold Air Force Base, Tullahoma, Tennessee is my hometown. It's mainly civilians that work there. They work on, rockets and weapons systems and things like that out there. So it's mainly civilians. And I'm going to get a security job out there. They pay $20-something an hour. It's easy work. There's never been a threat there. It's my hometown. It's no big deal, right? I'll just do that. They have good medical insurance. And so I did that. And about a year and a half into it, it turned out it was shit work, terrible work. One of the worst jobs I've ever had. And from a security standpoint, the leadership and the tactics and the mindset was the worst I had ever had up until that point. And it was a military base, an Air Force base. So what are you going to do?
Right.
I just show up and get your paycheck, and it's a joke. It's a joke. And so about a year and a half into it, I hurt my shoulder from an incident in Iraq and then an incident in Africa. And then I hurt it again during this job. And so I took leave. And as soon as I took leave, workman's comp, they started trying to fire me. Well, when you're trying to fire me or you're trying to do anything to me and you don't have a good reason, you're going to bring out my monster. And I'm going to feel like I'm getting bullied. And when I feel like I'm getting bullied, I don't care who you are. I don't care what it is. I'm going to fight back. And so I got a lawyer and I fought back and they decided that they didn't want to fire me anymore. And the day I was supposed to report back to work, I resigned because I was going to resign all along after that because of that ordeal. It went on for a few months. I was going to resign all along after that. And I got contacted about protecting the president of Haiti in 2019. And so I jumped on that. And that's the last job I ever took, except for becoming a yoga teacher. So 2019, the deployment to Haiti, it turned out to be the worst deployment of my life. And I resigned.
Yeah. What was so bad about it? Was it the leadership?
It was the leadership. So the mission was real. Like President Jovenel got assassinated like a year later.
Right.
So the mission was real. The threat was real. I knew it was real. I was brought down there as the senior, not the senior leader, but the senior expert on protection. I was the person that dealt with the president and his wife. I was the only person, including on our detail and including on his detail, I was the only person that was allowed to be with the president with a weapon. So that was my role. I was the AIC, the agent in charge, but I wasn't overall in charge. I couldn't make the ultimate decisions. And so we were doing some cowboy shit when all we really needed to be doing was keeping an eye on him and his wife. Mm-hmm. And we were doing everything but that. And it was some of that cowboy stuff. It was some of the stuff that, you know, Blackwater got accused of in the early days. It was some of the stuff that Custer Battles was accused of back in the early days. Just some cowboy stuff. And this was a mature group of men down there doing this mission. We had the right people. We just didn't have the right mindset, the right leadership, and we were focused on the wrong part of the story. And I'm glad that I resigned and left there, because one of the guys that was on my team, I fired because of how bad he was. And he and another guy that I had worked with a couple months later killed a couple in Nashville for money, and they're doing life in prison in Tennessee right now. Yeah. Two Marines, one Force Marine and one, what's the other organization? MARSOC. One MARSOC and one Force guy. And, I've worked with both of them. And so that was the kind of people, some of the stuff that, and I was just like, no, I'm leaving on my terms. I'm resigning. I'm going home. You guys can have this if that's how you're going to operate. And so I'm glad I did.
So through all this and through, you know, all these years, you have this internal volume. You have this trauma that you haven't dealt with. I don't even know if you've recognized it. What started you on this path, first to walk the Appalachian Trail, and then what took you to yoga, of all things?
I was going to kill my boss. I'm glad you brought that out. I left that out, I think. I don't think I brought that up. So when I walked the Appalachian Trail, I felt healed. When I got back off the Appalachian Trail, I slowly became me again. Mm-hmm. The busy world, the noise, the stress, it all worked its way back in. And I had forgotten how to be, to just be. I had detoxed, and now I had got back on the heroin, so to speak.
Sure.
And so the other pivotal point is I had it. I was finally done. I was done with the stress, the high blood pressure. I was done with being told what to do. I was, by stupid people. I was done with all this stuff. Now, I'm not saying I was right about anything. I'm just answering your question. I felt like I was just completely done. And when my boss, who was a little retired Air Force officer, when he tried to fire me for using inappropriate language at work, that's what they were trying to fire me for. A bunch of security guys and cops at an Air Force base, and he's trying to fire me for inappropriate language. So, of course, when I got my lawyer, but when he called me in the office and told me he was going to fire me. And when I left there, I was so upset that I decided I was going to wait for him to get off work. I was going to follow him home and kill him. Mm-hmm. And that's what I was going to do. Well, I didn't have another, there wasn't another thought on my mind.
And we didn't cover this. It's in the book. But when we talked about those 2 fights you had in that 1 year, the first fight almost ended that way too. The guy was saved by families showing up in the park.
That was the first time in my life. So that was after being a Green Beret, but before Ramadi and Triple Canopy. It was in between there. That was the first time. That wasn't the first time in my life I had chased somebody with a gun or something like that. But that was the first time in my life where I knew I gave myself the green light to kill somebody. When you're somebody like us that have all these skill sets, all these abilities, all these experiences, but you obviously keep those things in check. When you give yourself the green light to do whatever the fuck you want, it's liberating. Mm-hmm. It's liberating. Mm-hmm. And when you feel like it's just because it's a really bad person that was trying to do something bad to you, it's like just because the rest of society won't fight back and teach you a lesson, I will. So when I hear about a coworker goes to work and kills somebody, or like when that guy killed that insurance guy in New York, I don't go, oh my God, go catch this guy or whatever. I go, I wonder what the story is. Mm-hmm. Because I bet half the time the person getting what they got might have had it coming. Mm-hmm. That's how, that's how I look at those things. So I was in a scenario where I was going to be that guy. Mm-hmm. Everything goes and kills his boss, and I'm going to be the bad guy. Mm-hmm. His story, or my story is not going to be the narrative. Right. His story is going to be the narrative. He's going to be the government. He's going to be the media in this scenario, and I'm going to be on the shit end of the stick. And that's how those things work.
So this was your plan, or this was your thought, and what changed?
So in 2014, when I worked at Facebook, the guys that came down from Washington State, from Bill Gates's detail and Paul Allen's detail, they were used to smoking and doing marijuana because it was legal, and the corporations don't have a policy against it. So Facebook was the same way. So it's legal in California to do weed if you have a medical marijuana card, and it's legal to do weed if you work at Facebook. I mean, the campus at Facebook, each section has its own bar. Mm-hmm. It's a very liberal kind of, it's interesting. It's fascinating, kind of the dynamics out there. But back to the point, I got back to my camper. I was living in a camper at the time. And I got back to the camper, and I had been doing Ashtanga yoga. It's a type of yoga. I won't get into it because it's not important. But I was doing an Ashtanga practice. It takes about 90 minutes. So I thought, okay, if I do yoga, I usually feel better after yoga. If I do yoga, maybe I'll feel better because my internal volume was at a 10.
Right.
Like I was going to kill him. And I wasn't just going to kill him. I was going to hurt him. Mm-hmm. And then I was going to kill him. I was as upset. Everything in my life that had ever pissed me off, everything in my life that I wanted to do or say to get back at somebody, he was going to get.
Right.
And I knew it.
You had just hit your breaking point. You had hit your breaking point.
I do it. And since I had, once you kill a few people in a few different scenarios, you realize how easy it is.
Right. Right.
That's not the hard part. Killing people is not hard. It's giving yourself the green light to do it.
Right.
And so that's the hard part.
And getting away with it.
Yeah, I did. Well, that's where the conundrum came in. So I did 90 minutes of yoga, and I still wanted to kill him. And I started thinking, okay, if I go kill him, at that time, there was about 3 people or 4 people I wanted to kill, honestly, that had done me wrong in my life. And if they made it legal, I'd go kill those people and sleep like a baby. So I started thinking, do I go kill those people? If so, in what order? So my mind starts getting really busy. And the only thing that ever worked for me was weed. And so I called up a friend of mine, and I got some weed. And I smoked a bunch of weed, and I got really high. And I did some more yoga, and I felt like giving people hugs. I didn't want to hurt him. But I didn't want to go back to that job. I didn't know what to do. I thought, maybe I should commit myself. I need help. Like I noticed in that moment, like I got to do something. Like you got to do something, dude.
Is this?
And so I decided to become a yoga teacher.
I want to ask you real quick before you move on. Is this the first time? Because a lot of spiritual development happens after, or potentially, but a lot of the spiritual development happens after. I don't want to call it a nervous breakdown, but after people after the ego is destroyed, right? When the ego blows up, it gives us some clarity for a little while, or it can. It doesn't always, but. Was this the first time that you had? I mean, I know you'd been angry before. You jacked up those guys in the fight, stuff like that. But is this the first time that it got to that point, to where it was just like a bubble bursting for you?
No, I had been that mad before, but it was before I'd killed people. So going and killing them wasn't like, in your multiple choices. It just wasn't a choice.
But what I mean is this the first? Was this? Go ahead. Go ahead, please.
But what you said is a very valuable point for everybody. When you have an ego death, it's the hardest, darkest thing, and that's where I'm at now.
Yeah.
So that was the beginning. The segue into the enlightenment, the awakening, the higher consciousness. There's a lot of ways of talking about it. The darkness, embracing the darkness, becoming one, becoming the real you. Because most of us don't want to admit, I'll say something funny, simple, but it can be profound. Like most people don't want to admit they masturbate, right? So they'll lie about it. Well, there's a lot of things that people don't want to admit that they'll lie about. But once you wake up, only the truth can work,
right.
And so when you kill your ego and you only operate with truth, there's no facade. I'm not going to be this fake person. I'm not going to go try to act. I'm not going to try to make this person happy. Like when you eliminate all those, it's a game changer. But when you kill your ego, and I'm in the process of doing that, the depression, or what feels like depression, is that stuff that you have to go through. And when you end up on the other side of an ego death, you're free. You don't live in this material world any longer. You don't respond to the news and the ups and downs and all this nonsense in this fake world that's been created. You're grounded in your body, which means you're not in the future or the past in your mind. So when people say, what do you mean grounded in your body? Of course I'm in your body. It's like, no, you spend 95% of your conscious day unconscious, in the subconscious, so or in the unconscious mind. There's about 5% of the time the average person is in their body. And what I mean is grounded in right now. right now, this podcast is forcing me to be grounded in right now and pay attention to you. But how many times during the day are we thinking about something else, driving down the road, thinking about the future past, laying in bed, thinking about, you're not in your body. Once you're grounded in your body, that's mindfulness. You're present. Mm-hmm. And people read all these books and do all these things. It's like, that's all you have to do. You don't have to read anything. Mm-hmm. Just start being present. Stop being distracted. Stop being, and so that's my little spill on that.
You had already been doing yoga up to this point. Was yoga just, initially, was it just, a way for an older guy with a beat up body to kind of stay in shape?
That's a great question that we didn't talk about. So when I finished the Appalachian Trail in 2015, a friend of mine bought me the book, and every veteran should read this book. Everybody with childhood trauma should read this book or listen to it. The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Mm-hmm. I read that book, started reading that book in 2015, and I started crying. And I wasn't ready. And so in 2019, I was ready to read it. And when I read in that book, Bessel van der Kolk or some of his colleagues or people in that realm did a study in 2014 with traumatized, sexually assaulted, abused, raped, incest women, a large group of that. They did an extensive study in 2014, and they found out that yoga does more to help trauma than any medication on the market. Mm-hmm. And so I'm a very logical, critical thinking type person in this phase of my life. And so it was like, oh, okay, well, I need something to do. I need a passion, a purpose in life. Sheryl Sandberg's foundation, Lean In, is this beautiful thing. She's this beautiful person. Well, I want to be a beautiful thing. I want to do beautiful things. So I'm going to have this foundation, and I'm going to teach yoga for free. And it started out great at first. Mm-hmm. And COVID hit, and COVID, which I truly believe then and now was a false flag attack. COVID crushed people that were doing things like me, hairdressers, mm-hmm. people that own gyms, MMAs. They crushed people that were doing things like that. So I was trying to give back something free to the community. I was teaching 2 times a day, 6 times a week at the American Legion. And so that's where I got that idea, was from that book. Somebody that could speak our language, that had dealt with veterans for 40-something years. He invented the term PTSD. So we're better to learn about what that means. Where does that come from? What's that about? And so you want to talk about why we act the way we do, or why people act the way we do. It's like, if I'm present and you say something, there's a gap between what you say and how I respond. If I'm not present, somebody beats on that door right now and starts screaming, boom, I'm not present anymore. That 95%, that chimpanzee part of my brain is now in charge. And now I turn and I react to the door. And if it's trouble, I'm ready to meet it. I'm ready to inflate to 10 just like that. Well, you can't operate in a civilized society like that. So that's what we're dealing with. Right. That's what we're dealing with. It's that simple. It's a part of our brain that operates how we behave. And if we're not mindful and stay in that other part of our brain, the part I'm in right now, that's when those things are going to happen. And so practicing through neuroplasticity and through time. What is neuroplasticity? It's the same thing Ivan Pavlov did with his dogs. He would ring a bell, they'd salivate, and then he'd feed them. It's conditioning people. That's what they do to humans. We were conditioned to act a certain way during COVID, right? It's a conditioning. So you can condition yourself to do good things as well as bad things. So what you do and what you think about on a daily basis will change you through neuroplasticity. And the younger you are, the easier and faster that change will happen. But you still can be my age and change. Do I think at 59 years old, I'm going to have zero violence inside of me and be this totally different person? No, I'm always going to be me. I just need to be mindful. And that's the purpose of my book, where a monster and mindfulness become one. Mm-hmm. That's the subtitle of the story of my book.
So when you had this moment, you're like, something has to change, and you had already been practicing yoga. So you are already aware that, like, obviously you knew that you had trauma in your past, but it's bubbling up and becoming, you're more aware of it. How has your practice of yoga, how has anything else that you've been doing, how has that, or I should say, have you worked through some of that? Have you purged or cleansed or even made friends with your past or with that trauma?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been at this 5 years, and in the last year, I would say has been the biggest breakthrough. I'd say in the last year, 2 years, but more the last year, I would say I'm really feeling the effects of the ego death. I practice meditating. I have animals and a hobby farm, and I don't focus on, doing great things anymore, getting attention anymore. And, earlier, especially last year, it's like I'm a minimalist. I got on social media to try to promote my book, because if the book does good, I can have the money for a free yoga studio and pay instructors to give yoga for free. It'll all come to fruition. But what I found out was chasing that was wanting something. Mm-hmm. And that's my ego, and you start going, well, hold on. It's like, no, like if you really want to get down to it, if you really want to do this right, that's what it's about. It's about just being, just being right here, just being calm, being mindful, not letting everything else affect you. And I'm not there yet. Like, I still deal with anxiety and depression, and I have really bad days sometimes. But what I'm doing right now, I'm at the part of the ego death. If you look into what Carl Jung or a lot of the experts talk about the ego death, and it was great that you understand that and we're talking to that. But, when you get to that, there's a antisocial, isolation, quiet, stillness aspect of that can make you not want to be around humans. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of realized that in my quest, I was being a little hypocritical. I was talking about being, killing my ego, and I'm out here trying to get on podcasts and trying to promote my book, and I'm on social media and whatever. It's like, I'm lying to myself. So that's where you have to back up. And with those biases and that self-talk and that justification, and go, hey, man, if my book's supposed to do well, it's just going to do well. I wrote it, and that's karma. And karma is not punishment. Karma is what you do. And so if you do great things are going to happen in your life. You reap what you sow. It is a cause and effects. It's a real thing, and I believe in it 100%. I think when I die, everything that I did to somebody else, I'm going to experience. Mm-hmm. And that's karma. I'm going to experience myself, what I did to people. Everybody I killed in Iraq, I'm going to experience what it was like to get killed by me. Every girl that I ever lied to or cheated on or hurt, are monstrous towards, I'm going to experience what I did to them, and that's what hell is to me. That's how I look at things. And so, when I look at karma now, it's serious. And I want to make sure that whatever I'm putting out and whatever I experience with animals or humans or other living things is as beautiful and kind and as loving as I'm capable of. But there's no guarantees. I'm still me. And if I'm not mindful and things get crazy enough, I'm gonna act like an alpha team leader in Ranger Battalion or a shooter in Iraq.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Lee, for sharing. Well, first off, for writing this book. It's amazing. And also for coming on and sharing your story with us. Really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Out of there's some great podcasts out there within the special ops community, but within that realm, you guys have been my favorite for a while. I just like your style.
Lee,
I like the way you guys do business. Very respectful. There's no ego, even though you guys could. You guys have incredible backgrounds, and what you're both doing right now is still doing great things. So, I appreciate, I'm nobody, to be somebody in our community, you got to do something that gets in the news, and
I'm nobody.
You got to do something for valor.
Yeah.
And so I'm just grateful that I could unpack, that I could have an opportunity to say that you can be a below average person and then find a way to catch up to the group and spend the rest of your life just surrounding yourself with good people and try to work above average, even if you started out below average. You can manifest whatever you want, but you got to start paying attention to your internal narrative. If you're talking negative and talking shit but acting nice to people, you're full of shit. Mm-hmm. You're two different fucking people. The outside's got to match the inside, and if it doesn't, you need to look in the mirror until it does.
It's so true. Internal Volume, find it on Amazon. You guys, it's a hell of a read. I'll just say that. It is quite exciting. Is there anything that we missed? Anything that I failed to talk about or ask you about that you?
We've probably gone a long time, so I don't want to drag it out. I just want to say a shout out to Joe Price. I hope that we can get justice one day for Joe Price and John Chapman and folks like that. I hope we can clean up the special ops community a little better, like with what you guys are doing with Tim Kennedy. Guys like me really appreciate that. It's really triggering for things like that to happen in our community. So seeing people policing that up quickly and holding a standard, it makes me proud again that I was a Green Beret and that I was a Ranger. So I really appreciate that. And I just want to say that if anybody, I just finally got 100% VA after 20-something years of fighting. I got a great guy. If anybody wants to reach out at Lee Deckleman at gmail.com, I'll hook you up with a great guy. He got me and my sister 100%, in about a year and a half. And so I know a lot of guys are fighting to just get the basic care. And if you need help, please reach out. And Tunnels to Towers, that's where I give my money. They're doing great things for homeless veterans. And so I just want to shout out to them. Anything we can do as veterans to help veterans, lift them up, and the veterans that have been lifted up by lies, let's bring them back down. Mm-hmm. And let's bring that harmonious balance back to our community. And that'd be a great thing to see happen before I die.
It would be amazing. Dee, do we have any questions? No? Okay. Where can people, are you on social media at all, or where can people find you?
No. If somebody wants to reach out to me about anything, I'm living small. I'm not going to be a public, even if this book does real good. I just want to kind of do my thing. But if I can help anybody, or if anybody has any questions, or, Lee Deckleman, DECKELMAN @gmail.com. I'd help anybody in any way I can. But, my book's about a traumatic life that has a little bit of war in it. It's not a war story.
Oh, it's a war story. Like, the whole book is a war story.
In a way, it is kind of.
It may not be in Iraq or Afghanistan, but it's a war story.
The last thing I want to say is I'm no hero. I've never done anything heroic, but everything in that book is true.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of our viewers are history buffs, or they like the military, or, the intelligence community or special operations community. If this is a book, honestly, because it's not just about the military. It's a book that, like, everybody can relate to in one way or another. It's your story. So, I really hope people do pick this up and read it. We're going to go now. We are going to do a Team House After Dark for our Patreon subscribers after this. So if you're a Patreon subscriber and you want some spicy tales, that's where you'll find them. So thank you, everybody. We really appreciate it. Lee, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Hey guys, I want to tell all of you today about a new newsletter that we're launching that encompasses both the Team House podcast, the Eyes On podcast, and the High Side news outlet, which I run with Sean Naylor. The newsletter is going to be once a week. It's going to come into your inbox, and you're going to get the most current podcasts on Eyes On and the Team House, and whatever's topical or current on the high side. So it's another way for us to get the information out to you, as social media algorithms are pretty iffy and you never really know what you're going to get. So this is a once a week email. It'll slide into your inbox, and it will have, the greatest hits of that week.
It's really good, man. I'm checking it out.
The website for it is teamhousepodcast.kit.com/join. teamhousepodcast.kit.com/join. You go there and you enter into your email list, or you enter your email into the little thing on the website, and you're good to go. And that'll be it. So we really appreciate your support and hope you'll consider signing up.
Where's the link?
The link will also be down in the description if you're looking for it there.
And that's teamhousepodcast.kit, KIT, Kilo India Tango.com /join.